started the fall off, and I was looking at my calendar, and I looked at Thanksgiving and thought, wow, Thanksgiving is really really late this year. And I thought, man, November is just going to drag on. There's a lot of month before Thanksgiving. And here we are, the Sunday before Thanksgiving. It kind of snuck up on me. I don't know if it did that to you or not, but yeah, Thanksgiving is upon us. I hope you all have plans to spend time with family this week, but no, we have that going on. We've been talking in our sermon series about giving, and today we're gonna kind of wrap that up. I have found that it is probably a good idea to not preach on giving very long because people just quit showing up to church. So we're gonna wrap her up today and move on next week. I do want to give you kind of a heads up on what's going on over the next couple of weeks. Next weekend, I had kind of a last-minute phone call. The reason it was last minute is because I failed to return this person's call earlier. But Bill Fair gave me a call and said, "Hey, I'd love to come up and preach for us and do that." I said, "All right, well let me clear it up and we'll see if we can get it going." So Bill Fair will be here next weekend, sharing about what's going on in Haiti. And will be preaching to us next Sunday, so you won't want to miss that. That'll be a great time with him here. And then the following week, as Alicia said earlier, Kent Wagner, that is the preacher prospect that we're looking at possibly hiring. He will be here in 2 weeks and preaching, and then there will be a soup dinner afterwards that you can read in your bulletin. You can bring a dessert to. And this is going to be a great time. You won't want to miss it. This will be an opportunity where 200 people get in a room and they meet one person and really get to know them in about 2 hours. So no, it ought to be really good. But no, plan on being there. If for some reason, like Alicia said, you can check out Kent online. If you have any trouble finding him, you can send me a text or call me, and I can kind of get you headed the right direction. But he is online. He's got some sermons online. The church website that he planted is online, and you can kind of check out some of the things that he's all about and the way he preaches and stuff like that. So you can have kind of a little bit of homework to do before he comes on the 8th. But today we're talking about giving. We're talking about giving, and as you may remember, if you've been here the last couple of weeks, the first week we talked about the motivation we have to give. Why do we give? What's the reasoning behind it? We found that there's lots of ways that we can give in a wrong way, and we just as soon not give because our payment is rejected or denied. Last week we talked about the tithe. We talked about the 10% that God has asked of us to give back to His church, so that His church can go about serving the people in the area, serving the people around. This week we're going to talk about the above and beyond. The above and beyond, we talked about the tithe, but then there's that one last step that just takes off over that. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about generosity. Talk about generosity and about not really putting any bounds to our giving or any limits to what we can give. And I was trying to kind of pinpoint some generous people throughout my life that I've noticed. And it started off in junior high. And I'm sure there was generous people before I was in junior high, but I just can't remember that far back. Because in junior high, I went to school out in Washington, Kansas, and I know there's some new regulations here. I know Adrian's keeping a close eye on Jackson Heights and all that, but back in the good old days, and I can say that because I'm almost 30, and most of you are younger than me. So, back in the good old days, there was a pop machine and a candy machine in the hallway. Now, they didn't let the elementary schoolers have that, at least in my good old days, and probably for good reason. Probably shouldn't have let the junior highers have it, but they did anyway. So we had this pop machine, candy machine, and in junior high, we could bring money to school, and we could buy a pop over lunch, or we could, if we didn't quite have enough to eat, we could buy chips or something to eat afterwards, or a candy bar or whatever. And so But I was fairly tight with money in junior high. I had some of it, but I really didn't like to spend money. My wife since then has taught me that it's okay for me to spend money. Um, but I really, all my life I've really, unless I'm spending money on like guns or something like that, it's not to be spent. And so I have this, pretty tight money mentality. And so I remember thinking in the mornings before I got on the school bus, I thought, boy, I've got this money sitting here. I could bring 50 cents or $1 and get myself a pop and go, that might be nice. But at 7, I thought, you know what? I want to keep my money. I want to save it. And I thought, at 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm thinking, I'm not going to be that hungry, by the time lunch comes around and after lunch and all that. Well, it turns out almost every day I was wrong. I was just starved and couldn't figure out why I didn't have the infinite wisdom to bring my money. I had a group of friends that they always went down to the pop machine, so I just walked with them for lack of anything else to do. So I just kind of walked along. They'd get their stuff, and I can remember there was two guys that off and on, every time I went down there, they would buy me something. They'd buy me a pop or a candy bar, and I never really asked them to. They just did. They were just very generous junior hires. And I remember that. I remember the generosity, and they kind of stuck out to me that, they were pretty good guys. They would buy me all my junk food that I didn't have the sense to bring money and buy myself. And then as I got older, I decided after I graduated high school, I've preached about it before, my big red truck. I decided to buy that for my college truck, because why wouldn't you? In downtown Manhattan, college, university, why wouldn't you want an extended cab full-size diesel pickup as your college vehicle? And so I got down there, but I did notice one thing. I did notice that in a college town, that truck was a very valuable commodity 3 days a year. That truck was very valuable. On July 31st, when people were moving out into another apartment, that was very valuable. On August 1st, when they were moving into an apartment, and then on August 2nd, for some of those friends that needed furniture and were driving around picking it up off the curbs. All right, so there were 3 very valuable days, and so people would borrow my truck, and it was fine. I always kind of thought, well, I have a big truck, so I can lend it out and do that. And so, every once in a while, my truck, it has a 35-gallon gas tank, which has been a problem ever since I bought it. It's way too big and costs way too much to fill. So I usually ran it between half and a quarter of a tank. That was just kind of where it kept. I mean, when I got down to E, I'd fill it up to a quarter, and then I'd be able to go another 2 or 3 days. I never really filled that thing. But when people would borrow it, there were a few generous people that when they actually borrowed it to do something, they would bring it back, and it would be completely full of diesel fuel. And at that point, I knew how much that tank full of diesel fuel cost. And they didn't have to do it. They sure didn't use that much diesel, but they filled it up just because they were over the top. What they had to do, they did. My brother Andrew borrowed it one time to move in college, and he did me the luxury of filling it up with gasoline. So, really had some very generous people throughout my life, really helping me out. There are other times that, and I don't know if some of you have these people. Any of you have people that whenever you go out to eat with them, you have a hard time paying the bill? You have a hard time paying for lunch or paying for dinner? My dad and me, we have this fight every single time we go to eat. Lately, it's there are certain times in my life where I act like I'm going to fight him, but then I let him pay because I know that it'd really be in our best interest for him to pay for our meal. But I mean, there were times when I came in and I told Tina, I said, we are going to pay for lunch today, and that's final. And the way I had to get into it, I had to either call the restaurant ahead of time, or I had to very early on, before we even ordered, I would give the waitress a whole bunch of cash and say, I don't care what it costs, I'm paying for this meal. And I just had to, because there are certain people in life that they're very generous. They always take care of stuff like that. If they have the opportunity, you won't pay for anything. And I have several people in my life that I see do that. And I can sit back and I can think, okay, this person, they are always very generous. They always go over the top. They never need to, but they always do this, and they always do this. And we get, Tina and I, we get Christmas cards and pastor appreciation cards, and it's just over the top stuff that people don't have to do, but we get those. And we're like, man, that's a very generous couple, or those are very generous people, and we're overwhelmed and impressed with those type of things. And we those are the type of people we look at and we say, man, I want to be like that someday. I want to be the type of person that people look at and say, you know what, they're generous, they're over the top. And so this morning we're going to talk about that generosity. Throughout Scripture, we see several instances of where God has designed us to be that way. God has designed us to be giving. In Ecclesiastes chapter 5, Solomon is talking about the meaning of life. The book of Ecclesiastes is all about the meaning of life. He asks the question in the beginning of the book. He says, what's the meaning of life? And then he goes through these different things. And he talks in chapter 5 about finances. He says, he who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves abundance with its income. This too is vanity. When good things increase, those who consume them increase. So what is the advantage to their owner's expense except to look on? The sleep of a working man is pleasant, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich man does not allow him to sleep. And so, there's this idea that wealth, if we are focused on wealth, if we are focused on getting rich and building this empire for ourselves, if we're focused on that, there's no happiness in that. We're missing the point. We're missing the design that we're designed for. In Matthew 6:24, it says, no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. So speaking again to that, you can't focus on finances. You can't focus on finances. And the opposite of focusing on finances is to be free with your giving. It's to be free with the giving and to look around and to take care of the needs of the people around you and say, okay, this family, I know they're going through a tough time. We've got a little extra. Let's send this, or let's send them a card with this gift card in it, or let's just do something a little out of the ordinary, a little over the top. And so when we do that, we're illustrating to ourselves and to God that, hey, we are not focused on money. This is not our money to begin with. This is something that we can give and we can offer to others. Matthew 19:21 says, Jesus said to them, if you wish to be complete, go and sell your possessions and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come follow me. So Jesus' whole idea in the first place was, listen, if you want to really be in a complete relationship with me, in a full relationship with me, in a perfect relationship with me, you'll sell everything, and you'll trust me fully. And those are the type of ideas that we get in Scripture, that we are not meant to be this money-making machine that we build and build and build and then retire and coast at the end of life. That's not the purpose. That's not the end goal of why we're here on earth. So this morning we want to ask the question, because we want to honor God. We want to go over and above the top. We don't want to focus on money. We want to look to pleasing God. So what is it? What is it that makes us that person? What is it that makes us that person that the people around us look and say, you know what? They have gone over the top for me time and time again. Or that person that, what makes us that person that is free to you know what? I don't know how we're going to pay the bills or this month, but I'm going to give this because I know this family needs it more than I do. Or I'm going to sell this and buy an older car because I know this would benefit this family, or I'm going to give this car to this family because I know they just had a horrible run-in with all their cars, or whatever it is. What makes you and I that person? What makes us generous to that point? And so we're going to talk about that this morning. We're going to actually look at 3 steps to disciplining ourselves to become the generous person. The generous person, that generous person that we know we should be, we know that would benefit the people around us. What are 4 steps that put us there? And we're going to start with number 1 is preparation. Number 1 is preparation. If we want to be that generous person, we want to grow up or move on, and we want people to look at us or just know that we're not focused on money, we're focused on people around us. What makes us that generation? The first step is preparation. Getting to the place to be generous. I have no idea where you are at in your finances. I know we've had several times, Tina and I, in our lives where we just, we were just very lucky and fortunate to make the tithe. We were just, if we could make a tithe and then we could pay the rest of our bills, boy, that was a good month. And so, you look at yourself and you're thinking, well, how can I be over the top? How can I send $20 to this family if I don't have $20 to give? How can I do this when I just don't have the finances to do it? Well, it takes preparation. It takes time. It takes time. Proverbs 13:11 says, "Wealth obtained by fraud dwindles, but the one who gathers by labor increases it." And the principle here is, there's a lot of America, there's a lot of this area that have this idea that we just need one big thing that can put us ahead. That can put us ahead. I know I drive to Topeka often enough that I know that the casino down along the highway, they aren't doing too bad. I think there's a lot of people that are looking and hoping and feeling that this, if I can spend $20, I can really make it happen. I can really make it happen. This is all I need. If I can just, we don't have enough money for rent this week, so I'm going to take this money to the casino. I'm going to double it. We've got a 50% chance, or whatever the chance is. We got this mentality in our minds that, okay, this is this big thing. If we can just have this, then we can make it. And unfortunately, I don't know how many of you have tried that lifestyle or in the middle of that lifestyle or haven't tried it, but thinking, yeah, that'd be a great idea. Number one, find the people that have tried that lifestyle. They'll be able to tell you. This whole idea, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. There's a reason the casino is doing very well for itself. So this idea that, I want this big thing. I want this get rich quick. I want to really make, this is what I've got to look at. Because really, in the long run, everything that you and I make, it takes time. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes work. Day in and day out. It takes commitment. It takes all of these things. And so as part of our preparation, if we want to be people in God's church who are prepared and equipped to be over-the-top givers, to be available to give to those around us, to family members who are in need, to friends who are in need, if we want to be those people, we've got to physically prepare our own budgets to where we can make that happen. And Dave Ramsey, he talks about that in a lot of his courses. My wife and I, we have taken Dave Ramsey twice now and probably need to take it a third time because, we're just picking up a few things as we go. I think you're only supposed to have to take it once. But we're continue to take it, hoping that we'll finally catch on. But the whole idea behind giving, and the whole idea really behind his course is that he wants Christians, you and I, to build wealth, not to build wealth, but to be able and equipped and prepared to give it. Because that's the whole idea. It's not so that we can be rich and we can have a comfortable retirement. It's because of the people around us that we can be equipped to minister to those around us. And so we need to be prepared for that. But the thing is preparation is not only just a physical. Preparation isn't simply a physical preparation. There is a mental preparation that goes with it. In Luke chapter 14, verse 25, starting in verse 25, it says, "Now large crowds were going along with him, and he turned and said to them, 'If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which one of you, when he wants to build a tower, does not first sit down and calculate the cost to see if he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who observe it begin to ridicule him, saying, "This man began to build and was not able to finish." Or what king, when he sets out to meet another king in battle, will not first sit down and consider whether he is strong enough with 10,000 men to encounter the one coming against him with 20,000? Or else, while the other is still far away, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So then, none of you can be my disciple who do not give up all his own possessions. And so going along with this, the whole idea of evaluating how much this tower is going to take when you build it, it's not just physical money. It's a mental thought that am I willing to put God in front of everything else, of every relationship, of my own personal needs? Am I willing to put God first? And if we're not mentally prepared for that, it's going to be awfully hard for us to go above the required and above the top on our financial giving. If we're not mentally engaged in saying, you know what, God, you get my best, you get everything that I am. If we can't put God in that place, it's going to be very difficult. So we've got to be prepared. We've got to mentally, we've got to physically, just budget-wise, prepare to be generous people. It's part of the process. The second step that we need to take, we need to gain an understanding. We need to gain an understanding. The ultimate purpose that God gave you wealth was to give. The ultimate purpose for wealth is so that you can give it. The whole idea, many of you remember the parable of the steward, or several stewards. The master came and he gave different amounts of talents to different people, and you remember the story. The one, he went and doubled his, and the second one went and doubled his, and then the last one, he went and buried his in the ground. He said, well, when he comes back, I'll dig it up and give him what he gave me. God has given us physical wealth as something to use to further his kingdom. He has given us our finances. He's given us our wealth. And so the ultimate purpose of that is to put back into the ministry of the people around us, is to fill needs, is to fill the family that they need some help. They need that. The purpose of us making the wealth that we do, we've been equipped to make more than we need. We've been equipped. That's how God has maintained his church, is that he has equipped believers to make more than really we need to live off of. And so you and I, we have this opportunity to fulfill that ultimate purpose of wealth and to return a lot of what God has given us to those around us who have needs. It's one of those things that you can live your entire life and you can bury your wealth in stuff that really doesn't matter. Ultimately, when you were born, you came into this world just naked and with nothing. And God has since then equipped you with a wife, a house, kids, whatever that is, and financial wealth. And at the end, you look back, you say, well, what did you spend your wealth on? What did you spend your money on? Was it new houses? Was it bass boats? Was it this? Was it that? Or can you look back and you say, you know what? We helped that family get back on their feet, or we helped this family, or we sent a gift to this, even if it is our own family. We sent a gift. I knew my son wasn't doing well, so I sent him some money. Or I knew my dad was really struggling with this, so we sent him a gift. Or we did this or that, and we weren't living to build up our empire. Because ultimately, what happens to your empire? You leave this world the same way you came in, and so you have nothing. So basically, you are taking that talent, that wealth that God has given you, and you are just burying it in stuff that you're not going to take with you. And so you're ultimately, the money that we have, the more of that type of stuff we get, we're just burying it in the ground. Now, let me clear up. It's okay to have a new house, or it's okay to have a nice house. It's okay to have that stuff. I'm not saying, well, I guess I did buy a house. I should sell it probably. I'm not saying that that's bad. I told them in Cowboy Church, it's okay to have a bass boat if you want a bass boat. It's, that's okay. But the thing is where is the focus? Where is the focus of where our wealth is going? Are there ways in which we can look back through our checkbook and we say, yeah, we gave this to them, or we donated this to them, or back and forth? So our second step is understanding that that's what wealth is all about. Wealth is all about you and I understanding the ultimate purpose. You know, I build most of you know I build fence with Dowie, and there are some jobs that we get to, and it's fairly complicated. We're building a lot fence or something like that, and we just start putting posts in the ground, and I'm kind of dense anyway. I don't really catch on to things very fast, but there are times when we start building fence, and I don't really know what the end result is supposed to look like. I don't know exactly how the pin is supposed to work. I don't know exactly how, why we're building the fence to where we're at. And so pretty much I am just like dead weight that he's trying to drag along, that I am, we put a post here. Okay, that's right out in the middle of this lot. I don't understand what in the world you're doing, and so I'm no help really at all. I'm dragging along. But when I sit down and when he can draw it out for me, because that's usually what it takes, when he can draw it out for me, and he can say, okay, this is what we're building, this is where the cattle are going, this is why we're doing this, and this corner's going to, then I can engage my thought. Then I can engage my thought and okay, this makes sense, so if we do this, the wire's going to go on this side, and I can think through that, and I don't have to ask him every single time that we go to drig a post, like, what is this one doing here? I mean, why are we, where do you want this post? So if I can engage on the actual purpose of where and why we're building the fence, then I can understand, and I can start putting my full effort, and I can stop being dead weight, and I can start looking at, okay, we need to be moving this up here. This is our next step. This is how this is going. Now, see, in our wealth, if we don't understand that the overall purpose of why we have finances in the first place is to encourage the people around us, is to encourage family, is to encourage the loved ones that we have, or to spend our income or our wealth with the people around us. If we don't understand that goal, it makes it hard to live that way. It makes it hard to act out the over-the-top giving that we're talking about, because we just don't understand the purpose. We have wealth, and we know that it pays the bills, and we're okay with that. The church is supposed to get a little bit, and then we're supposed to pay the bills with the rest. And if we don't comprehend that, if we don't understand exactly why God has given us wealth, then we miss the point. Our third step is confidentiality. This is a tough one. Confidentiality is a tough one. Giving is between you and God. Giving is between you and God. Now, like I said, it's tough, and you're like, well, yeah, that's a pretty easy concept. When I put money in the plate, I fold my check in half so nobody else can read how much my check's for, and this and that. But what about the times, and I caught myself this week. What about the times when you give a gift, or you mail a card to someone, or you send out flowers to somebody, and they don't acknowledge that they got them? What happens? Yeah, I did it this week, and I told Tina and I, it was my mom's birthday this week, is really what the story was. And so my wife is very good at helping me to send people gifts when they really should have gifts. And so she said, you know what, you need to have your mom some flowers sent or something. Okay, that's fine. So I called up the flower shop in Washington and had them deliver flowers to her work. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, I'm glad I did this. I don't need any credit for it or anything like that. But in the front of my mind, I was thinking, I never really got any confirmation that she got them. You ever have those moments where you're like, oh, she never thanked me for those, or she never called. She usually makes a pretty big deal about this, but she never really told me that she liked the flowers. And then a little bit later on, Tina was looking on Facebook. She said, oh yeah, look at this on Facebook. Your mom is thanking somebody else for some flowers that she got at work. I'm thinking to myself, well, were those my flowers that I sent, and she's thanking this other lady for them? And so I'm thinking to myself, well, I need to call her and straighten this out. And then I caught myself. I'm like, whoa, what am I doing here? Have you ever been in that situation? You're like, boy, I need to make sure, and I kind of put it in this, I need to make sure that she got them so the flower shop didn't jip us. You ever done that? I need to just make sure that they got those flowers. No, really, deep down what you're saying is, hey, let's make sure that you and I both know that you know that I did that. All right. Isn't that what we're saying? Isn't that what you ever call someone and say, hey, did you get my card? I have. Yeah. You're basically saying, oh, hey, did you see that I did a great thing for you? You know, you never have people call you and tell you that. You know, our giving needs to be confidential. It's easy to do that when we're talking about offering at church, but when you think about those little things like, oh, hey, did you get my card last week? Well, yeah, you put it in the mail. Don't you remember? You know, it's you know, it ultimately, I do understand some stuff gets lost in the mail, but if it's a gift or something like that, really doesn't matter if it gets to them. Now, obviously, sometimes it does, but on your end, on your part of the giving end of that, like, I'm just thinking about these flowers. If they never showed up, or if that flower guy just put his name on them and said, hey, from me, you know, if whatever that happened, it really doesn't affect me at all. Because in my heart, between me and God, I paid and sent and paid for flowers for my mom. And really, ultimately, it doesn't matter if they got the card or if they acknowledge me for the card or if they acknowledge me for the flowers. It's a gift that I did, and you know what? That's all I have to do. Now, you know, obviously those type of things, you know, you don't have to start sending anonymous get well soon cards. You're like, hey, I hope you get well soon. We've been really thinking about you. I'm not going to write my name because I don't want you to know who it is. I mean, obviously you're going to sign your name to cards like that, but you know, it's those type of things that we've got to discipline ourselves and say, okay, what am I doing mentally? Why am I making this phone call to make sure they got their birthday card? Why am I actually doing that? You know, honestly, these are one of those instances where we can discipline ourselves and say, this is a gift. This is what I've given. I don't need any recognition. If they forget that I give it to them, that's great because I get my reward in heaven. And that's what God says. That's what we read in Matthew chapter 6. A lot of you are familiar with these verses. 6, starting in verse 3, says, but when you give to the poor, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving will be in secret, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. You know, and so this whole idea, this above and beyond, when we're talking about being that generous person, we're talking about being that generous person. Our giving is between us and God, and it's something it's something it's something that needs to be confidential. And so that's a huge step in our giving. And our last step, our final step, number 4, is faith in the results. We need to have faith in the results. You know, some of those results we're going to see. Some of those results you and I are going to see. Those are the results that we've been talking about the last couple of weeks. You know, the faith. You know, when we sit down and we say, you know what, this family really needs some help. Let's do this. Let's do this and give this to them, or let's give them, you know, this, or let's loan them our car. Let's do something here for them. You know, it's going to improve it's going to increase your faith. Your faith with God is going to grow. You know, those are results that you can see. The relationship that you, based on your giving, saying, you know what, I want to do this. This is something I'm going to give. When we do those things, our relationship and our trust and our love with God grows. We see those things. It's the other side of the coin that we don't see. It's the recipient's results. We never see the recipient's results. And we may see some of them. Now, especially some of you who aren't very good at confidentiality, you drag it out of them. You're like, hey, how did that make you feel, that card that I sent you? you know, we see a few of those, but we really don't see the extent of how that really affected the people who receive that gift, the people around us that receive that gift. In 2 Corinthians chapter 8, Paul's writing in 2 Corinthians about some corrections that the Corinthian church needs to make. And he's talking about this other church that had sent him a gift. In chapter 8, verse 2, it says, that in a great ordeal of affliction, their abundance of joy and their deep poverty overflowed in wealth of their liberty. For I testified that according to their ability and beyond their ability, they gave of their own accord, begging us with much urging for the favor of participation and support of the saints. And this, not as we had expected, but they first gave themselves to the Lord, and to us by the will of God. And so Paul is telling this story. And I want you to look at this story under the face value part of it. Paul is telling this story to the Corinthian church. He's saying this group of people, they gave. They gave, and they pretty much pushed it. They urged. They said, this is what we want to give. And Paul knew them. He'd planted that church. Paul is a person who'd been planting young churches all throughout this area. And so he's working with young Christians. You can read through a lot of his letters and see that there's a lot of discouraging things as a preacher or as a church planner. There's a lot of discouraging things going on that Paul is trying to correct in all of these letters. But at this moment, he's talking about a church that has given above and beyond their ability. He says this church has given actually more than what they probably should have. And Paul's sharing this with the Corinthians. He said, I don't understand how they're surviving because they've given so much. I just don't see it. Imagine the impact that had on Paul. Imagine the impact that had on Paul. Now, we'll never know exactly what happened there. We'll never know exactly how that church motivated Paul. But Paul is in this situation where he has hope in this one church. There's churches that are doing some crazy things. That he's trying to plant these churches. They're young churches. They just don't know how to love God right. And you can read through the New Testament and you can see it in Paul's letters. And Paul has this one church that sends him above and beyond the finances that they can really afford. And Paul, who knows what that church influenced in him. It might have been that gift. It might have been that gift that urged Paul to say, you know what? I will give the Corinthians another chance. I will write another letter to the Corinthians because this is what happens when they get it. Who knows? Who knows? There may be books in the Bible written because of that gift that gave Paul hope to do it. And then, so you think about that. You think about that church that sent that gift. They'll never know. They'll never know the full extent of their offering. They'll never know exactly how many people that affected because of their gift, because of their generosity. So I have a story in my own life that Tina and I may have shared this story with you before. Tina and I have we started tithing when we got married. It was something we knew we needed to do, and we just needed a cut and dry time to do it. And in this time of our life when we got married, we actually right before our wedding, I ended up borrowing some money. We had a fairly elaborate wedding. I can't remember if that was my wife's idea or mine, but we had an elaborate wedding. And so right before the wedding, I started putting some pencil to the numbers, and I said, listen, I'm not going to work 7 days a week up until the day of our wedding to pay for this thing. Let's borrow some money. Let's enjoy the weeks before our wedding, and let's just plan it out together and do what we need to do. And so we went to the bank, borrowed some money. And so after we got married, then we started tithing. And there was 1 month, it was within 2 months of our marriage, that we did, like I talked about last week, we started tithing. It was the first check out of our bills. We got to that check, we wrote it. We got to the end of the month, we didn't have the payment for that loan payment that we'd taken out for our wedding. And at that point, I couldn't decide whether that would null and void our wedding because we couldn't make the payment on that, but we just couldn't make the payment. And honestly, I was preparing myself to have a late payment. I told myself, you know what, we're just going to have to wait until next month and make the payment. We'll pay a little extra interest, we'll pay a late fee, whatever we got to do. We just don't have the money in the account. And at that point, there was Tina's grandma lived through this, and out of the overflow that she had, she sent a gift. She sent a gift. It was a check in the mail to us. It was the day before the payment was due. All right, now, like I said, I'd already prepared to do a late payment, but when I got that check in the mail, that established in my heart and in my life the fact that God, yes, He will take care of me. It doesn't matter how broke I am. When I tithe, God will take care of me. Now, Linda, Tina's grandma, she'll never know that. She'll never know the result of that one check in my life. Honestly, it was that one check that really drove a lot of my enthusiasm the last 3 weeks. And so when you think about that, when you think about the fact that in one check, Tina's grandma could write, give to us, could establish my faith in God, could establish my conviction knowing that God will take care of me. And then on top of that, I'm preaching you today about it. I've preached it in 3 services. This entire sermon series is built around it. My financial, the way that we build our finances has been built on that check. Because I know that God will take care of us. And so as we look back, what is that end result? What is the result of that one offering? Who knows? I don't even know. I thought I did. I thought I knew how that shaped my life, but who knows who heard this sermon today is going to make one offering? Who knows who's going to make one offering to some family that's hurting or that needs it? And that's going to establish their faith, and it's going to spider spread like that. Who knows what that one offering will do? And so you got to have faith and know that God will use your over-the-top offering for way more than you can ever expect. For way more than you can ever expect. It might last generations. Who knows? But you think about that, and you think about, okay, God can use me for way more than that $50 that I'm actually writing. That $50 might establish faith. That $50 might be that check that somebody needs at the end of the month when they know they've got a bill and they just can't make it. You never know exactly what that gift will do. And so this morning, we have an opportunity. We've been talking about giving. We've been talking about over the top. What is keeping you from being that person to give over the top? What is keeping you from being that person to changing somebody's life or thousands of people's lives? Who knows? What's keeping you from being that person to move the Word of God from a simple check or a gift card or whatever it is into somebody else's life that changes their life and lives around them forever? What is that you can do to prepare yourself to go through all of these steps? And I just challenge you this week to really think about that. I want to close with this idea that Dave Ramsey has. He says there's 2 ways that you can live financially. You can live with a clenched fist or an open hand. In the open hand, you run the risk. You run the risk of giving to some people who are going to abuse your gifts. To some people who are not authentic. I mean, you may your kids or your nephew or somebody, they may need money and they just may not be good with money and they may blow it. In a clenched fist, you hold it. You hold it. You've got control of it. You are the keeper of your money. The problem with the clenched fist is there's no way to add to that. There's no way for God to take care of you in this because you're not letting anybody in. This way, you may lose a lot. You may give a lot. It may not look very good. But this way, you're saying, God, I'm going to have an open hand here. If this person needs whatever, I'm going to do my best to make sure they get it. But at the same time, you're saying, God, I know you take care of me better than I can. And I firmly believe that God can take care of you and I way better than we can with a clenched fist. If we will allow ourselves to say, you know what, I know God will take care of me, and I need to do the things to where I can be a generous person, where I can have that open hand. And if I can do that, then ultimately we find that purpose of why we have wealth, why we give. And we have that purpose, we find that purpose, and we live it out. Will you pray with me? God, we thank you for the opportunity that we have to give and to share. Lord, I pray that this morning that you would help us to see the ways that we can change, the ways that we can grow closer to you. God, we love you for everything that you've given us, and we just pray that you would be with us as we go from here and as we put these ideas into practice. We love you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.